The infant's mismatched eyes, one brown, one pale blue, earned her a death sentence before she drew her 10th breath. As she tumbled through the dawn air toward the rocks below, an Apache woman gathering herbs made a choice that would shatter two worlds. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The scream tore through the mountain air like a knife through fabric, sharp and final. Sarah Mitchell's cry echoed off the canyon walls as the midwife stepped back from the birthing bed, her weathered face draining of color. The baby in her arms, a tiny, perfect girl with a crown of dark hair, opened her eyes for the first time, and the room fell into a silence more terrifying than any sound. One eye was the deep brown of rich earth after rain. The other gleamed pale blue, like winter ice catching morning light. "Lord, have mercy," the midwife whispered, her hands trembling as she held the infant at arm's length. "It's marked." Sarah, still weak from the brutal labor that had lasted through the night, reached out with desperate fingers. "Give her to me. Please, let me hold my daughter." But the midwife had already turned toward the door, where Sarah's husband Thomas stood frozen in the threshold. His face, normally weathered and kind from years of working the sparse farmland, had hardened into something unrecognizable. Behind him, drawn by the commotion, gathered the elders of Ridgemont, a settlement of 43 souls clinging to existence in the harsh Arizona territory, where superstition grew as thick as the sagebrush. Elder Silas Blackwood pushed past Thomas, his silver beard trembling with righteous fury. At 72, he was the oldest resident of Ridgemont, and his word carried the weight of scripture. "I warned you," he said, his voice like gravel scraping stone. "I told this community what would happen if we allowed outsiders to marry into our fold. Your wife brought this curse." "She's just a baby," Sarah sobbed, trying to rise from the bed but falling back against the sweat-soaked sheets. "She's innocent. Please." Thomas stepped forward, but his movements were hesitant, torn. He had loved Sarah once, or thought he had. She'd come to Ridgemont 3 years ago, a widow seeking refuge after her first husband died in a mining accident. The settlement had accepted her reluctantly, and Thomas, lonely after his own wife's death, had offered her protection through marriage. But love had never truly bloomed between them, and now, faced with this impossible choice, whatever fragile bond existed began to crack. "The old ways speak clear," Elder Blackwood continued, advancing into the room. Others crowded behind him. Margaret Cole, her face twisted in fear. Daniel Price, gripping his Bible like a shield. Ruth Anderson, clutching her own 2 children protectively. "A child born with the devil's eyes brings pestilence, drought, and death. The signs are in the scriptures if you know where to look." "That's not in any scripture," Sarah cried. "You're twisting." "Silence!" the elder's voice boomed. 3 months ago, the creek dried to a trickle. 5 weeks passed. The Henderson baby died of fever. Last week, wolves took half of the Morgan's livestock. The signs were there, and now the source is revealed. The midwife, Martha Green, placed the baby in a basket lined with rough cloth. The infant made small sounds, not quite crying, her mismatched eyes tracking the movement of shadows across the ceiling. There was something unsettling about that gaze, even to Sarah. One eye warm and familiar, the other alien and cold. She hated herself for noticing, for that split second of hesitation before her maternal instinct roared back to life. "Thomas!" Sarah's voice broke. "Please, don't let them take her." Her husband stood at the foot of the bed, his large hands opening and closing at his sides. His jaw worked silently. In his eyes, Sarah saw the war being waged, duty to his community versus duty to his wife, fear versus compassion, superstition versus reason. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "What does the council decree?" Thomas finally asked, his voice hollow. Elder Blackwood's expression softened with grim satisfaction. "The sacred cliffs," At dawn. It's the only way to cleanse the curse before it spreads. The child must be returned to the earth, and the mother must be purified through prayer and fasting. No! Sarah lunged from the bed, but her legs wouldn't support her. She crashed to the wooden floor, her nightgown soaking with blood and birth waters. You can't. She's my daughter. She's innocent. Martha, the midwife, picked up the basket, her face a mask of conflicted duty. It's for the best, Sarah, for the community, for your own soul. They carried the baby out into the cold November night. Sarah's screams followed them down the dirt path, past the cluster of rough-hewn cabins, toward the edge of the settlement where the cliffs rose like ancient sentinels. Thomas remained behind, unable to watch, unable to act. He sank into a chair and buried his face in his hands, while his wife collapsed on the floor, her cries gradually fading into broken sobs. The procession moved in silence through the darkness, lit only by torches that cast dancing shadows on the canyon walls. Elder Blackwood led the way, his back straight with conviction. Behind him, 6 community members followed, none speaking, all avoiding looking at the basket where the baby lay quiet, as if sensing that noise might hasten her fate. They reached the sacred cliffs as the first grey light touched the eastern horizon. The drop was severe, 300 feet of sheer rock face ending in a tumble of boulders and thorny brush. Over the years, Ridgemont had offered 3 other cursed things to this place: a 2-headed calf, a clutch of snake eggs found in the chapel, and once, decades ago, a woman accused of bringing sickness. No one spoke of that last one anymore. Elder Blackwood lifted the basket. The baby's eyes, those impossible, mismatched eyes, stared up at him without fear, without understanding. For just a moment, his hands shook. He was a father, a grandfather. But faith, twisted and hardened by years of isolation and fear, steadied him. "May God have mercy on this innocent vessel," he intoned, "and may this sacrifice cleanse our community of darkness." He tipped the basket. The baby made no sound as she fell, a tiny form tumbling through the dawn air, the rough cloth of her swaddling catching the first rays of sunlight. Below, the canyon waited with its sharp rocks and unforgiving earth. But someone else was waiting too. Aita moved through the canyon with the practiced silence of someone who had spent 23 winters learning the language of the land. Her deerskin bag hung heavy across her shoulder, filled with sage, yarrow, and wild onion, plants her grandmother had taught her to recognize before she could walk. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of juniper and the distant promise of rain. She was humming softly, an old song about the crow who stole fire from the sun when the shadow passed overhead. Her eyes snapped upward, a basket tumbling end over end through the pale dawn light. And inside, Aita didn't think. Her body responded with the reflexes of a hunter, reading trajectory and distance in the space between heartbeats. She dropped her gathering bag and ran, her moccasins barely touching the ground as she navigated the treacherous slope. The rocks here were loose, treacherous, but she knew every foothold, every stable stone. The basket hit an outcropping 20 feet above the canyon floor, the impact softening its fall but sending it spinning. Aita leaped, arms outstretched, catching the bundle against her chest as her feet slid in the loose gravel. She twisted, taking the impact on her shoulder instead of her back, rolling to absorb the momentum. Pain shot through her body, but her arms remained locked around the basket. For a long moment, she lay still, breathing hard, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. Then the baby whimpered, a small, confused sound, and Aita's hands were moving, unwrapping the rough cloth, checking for injuries. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, a perfect round face with skin still red from recent birth. And those eyes, Aita had seen many things in her life. She had watched her father die slowly from a white man's bullet lodged too close to his spine to remove. She had helped her mother birth 3 stillborn siblings, had sung them into the spirit world before they ever drew breath. She had survived a winter so harsh that half her band starved, had learned to find sustenance where others saw only death. But she had never seen eyes like these. One matched her own, dark as river stones, deep as ancestral memory. The other was pale, the color of snowmelt, of clouds, of things not quite of this earth. In the old stories, children born with such markers were considered blessed, touched by the spirits who walked between worlds. They were the ones who could see what others could not, who could speak to both the living and the dead. The white settlers called it a curse. She had heard them speak of such things during her rare ventures near their settlements, heard the fear in their voices when they encountered anything that defied their narrow understanding. "Little one," Aita whispered in her language, cradling the infant close to her chest. "What terrible people did you have the misfortune to be born to?" The baby's pale eye fixed on her face. Behind that gaze, Aita sensed something ancient, something knowing. She felt the weight of a decision settling on her shoulders like a physical thing. Above, on the cliff's edge, she could hear voices, angry, frightened voices, speaking in the harsh consonants of English. They would be looking down, expecting to see a broken body, confirmation of their cruelty. She pressed herself against the canyon wall, hidden in the shadow of an overhanging rock, and waited. "It's done," a man's voice echoed down. "May God forgive us." "There's nothing to forgive," another voice responded, cold and certain. "We protected the flock from the wolf. The Lord will understand." Their footsteps receded. Aita remained motionless until the sounds faded completely, until even the echo of their passage had been swallowed by the vast silence of the canyon. Only then did she stand, adjusting the baby's weight in her arms, and begin the long climb toward home. Her camp lay 3 miles northwest, nestled in a hidden valley where a spring bubbled up from the earth year-round. It was a small group. Only 15 people remained of the band that once numbered over 100. The white man's diseases, the soldiers' bullets, the slow starvation of forced displacement had whittled them down to this remnant. Her uncle, Nashota, led them now, his face carved with lines of grief and stubborn endurance. The camp was stirring to life as Aita approached. Smoke rose from morning fires, and she could smell cornmeal cooking, hear the low voices of women preparing the day's meal. Children played at the edge of the encampment, their laughter a brief respite from the weight of survival. Nashota emerged from his shelter as Aita entered the clearing. He was 45, but looked much older, his hair more grey than black, his movements careful with the pain of old wounds. His eyes, sharp and missing nothing, went from Aita's face to the bundle in her arms. "What have you brought us, niece?" The question held no judgment, only curiosity. Aita had always been different, had always seen the world through her own lens. She had refused marriage 3 times, had chosen the path of healer and gatherer rather than wife and mother. Nashota had long since stopped trying to predict what she would do. Aita unwrapped the cloth, revealing the baby's face. Around the camp, activity stilled. Women paused in their work, men turned from their conversation. Even the children fell silent, sensing the importance of this moment. The baby opened her eyes, both of them, and a collective intake of breath rippled through the gathered people. "She was thrown from the cliffs," Aita said simply. "The white settlers. They feared what she is." An old woman, Kimimela, stepped forward. She had been beautiful once. Aita had seen the paintings that captured her in youth. Now she was ancient, her face a map of wrinkles, her body bent with years. But her mind remained sharp, and she knew the old ways better than anyone. Kimimela studied the baby for a long moment, then placed a weathered hand on the infant's forehead. The baby didn't cry, didn't flinch, just stared up with those impossible eyes. The spirit touched, Kimimela said softly, born to see both worlds. The whites cast her out because they fear what they cannot control, but we remember what such gifts mean. She's white, a young warrior named Takoda said from the edge of the circle. His voice wasn't hostile, just stating fact. What happens when her people come looking? They threw her away, Ayita replied. Like refuse, like something worthless. They won't come looking for trash. And if you're wrong, Ayita met his gaze steadily, then we deal with it when it happens. For now, she's a baby who needs care, a gift the spirits placed in my path. Would you have me throw her back? No one answered. The question hung in the air like smoke. Nashota stepped forward and placed his hand on Ayita's shoulder. You caught her. She's yours to raise. But know this, when she's old enough to understand, she must learn both worlds. Her path will be difficult, perhaps more difficult than any we've walked. I know, Ayita said quietly. The baby made a small sound, hungry and immediate. Ayita looked around the circle of faces, some curious, some concerned, some carefully neutral. Then she carried the infant toward her shelter, toward the beginning of a story that would change them all. The first night was the hardest. The baby cried with the relentless desperation of hunger, and Ayita had no milk to give. She tried softened cornmeal mashed with water, but the infant choked and sputtered. She tried a cloth soaked in broth, but it wasn't enough. By midnight, the baby's cries had become weak, exhausted, and Ayita sat in her shelter with panic clawing at her throat. Kimimela appeared at the entrance, silent as shadow. In her hands, she carried a small bundle and a knowing look. Sana gave birth 3 moons ago, the old woman said, settling beside Ayita. She has milk to spare. But you must ask her yourself. Sana lived on the far side of the camp with her husband Chaitan and their infant son. She was 19, shy, with eyes that rarely met anyone's gaze directly. Ayita found her nursing her baby by the dying embers of her fire, and for a moment, neither woman spoke. She has your eyes, Sana finally said, looking at the pale-eyed infant in Ayita's arms. One of them, anyway. Will you help her? Ayita asked simply. I have dried meat to trade, herbs, whatever you need. Sana studied the baby for a long moment. Then she shifted her own son to her other breast and reached out. Give her here. The baby latched with desperate strength, and the silence that followed was profound. Ayita watched this young mother feed a child born to those who would have killed her. Watch Sana's face soften with the universal tenderness of a woman nursing the hungry. You can't keep trading for this, Sana said quietly. Come when she needs feeding. I have enough for 2. Those first weeks established a rhythm. Ayita would carry the baby to Sana 3 times each day, would sit beside the young mother while both infants nursed, would listen to Sana's soft songs and stories. In return, Ayita shared her knowledge of healing plants, taught Sana which roots would help with her persistent cough, which leaves would ease the pain of teething. The baby thrived. Her skin lost its redness, her limbs grew strong. She didn't cry often, but when she did, the sound carried a strange quality, as if she were calling to something beyond human hearing. The camp's dogs would whine and pace when she wailed. Once, during a particularly fierce crying spell, a hawk had landed on the roof of Ayita's shelter and remained there until the baby calmed. Kimimela noticed such things. The old woman watched the infant with an intensity that bordered on reverence, and one evening, as the sun painted the canyon walls gold, she approached Ayita with purpose. She needs a name, Kimimela said. A spirit-touched child cannot go unnamed. The ancestors grow restless. The naming ceremony happened on the night of the new moon, when the sky was darkest and the stars burned brightest. The entire band gathered in a circle around the central fire. Aita stood at its heart, holding the baby wrapped in a blanket Sana had woven from soft rabbit fur. Nashota spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of leadership and tradition. This child came to us from the sky, thrown away by those who fear what they cannot understand. But we know better. We remember the old stories. We remember that those who see with different eyes see further than most. Kimimela stepped forward, carrying a small bundle of sage. She lit it from the fire, letting the smoke curl upward, and began to chant in the old language. Words so ancient that even Aita only partly understood them. The smoke drifted over the baby, who watched it with fascination, her mismatched eyes tracking each swirl and eddy. Her name, Kimimela finally said, is Liluye, the singing hawk. For she calls to both earth and sky, to both the seen and unseen worlds. Aita repeated the name, feeling its weight, its rightness. Liluye. The baby made a small sound, almost like agreement, and around the circle, people began to relax. A name made things real, made them permanent. This was no longer just a white child Aita had rescued. This was Liluye, member of the band, protected by tradition and tribal law. But not everyone was satisfied. Takoda had remained silent during the ceremony, his jaw tight, his eyes shadowed. When the others dispersed to their shelters, he approached Aita and Nashota with deliberate steps. "We're making a mistake," he said bluntly. "The white settlements grow larger every season. More soldiers come, more farmers. We're down to 15 people, Uncle. 15! We can't afford to draw their attention." "They don't want her," Nashota replied. "They proved that when they threw her off a cliff. For now. But what happens when she grows? When she looks more like them than us? When someone in Ridgemont mentions a lost white baby and someone else remembers seeing an Apache woman with a pale-eyed child?" Aita held Liluye closer. "Would you have me abandon her? Leave her for the coyotes?" "I'm saying we need to think about survival. All of us, not just one foundling." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Nashota's expression hardened. "We've lost enough, Takoda. Our land, our brothers, our way of life. What we haven't lost is who we are. And we are people who protect the helpless. People who remember what the spirits teach. If we abandon that, then the whites have already won." Takoda's jaw worked silently. He looked at Liluye, at her strange eyes gleaming in the firelight, and something in his face shifted, not acceptance exactly, but resignation. "I hope you're right, Uncle. For all our sakes." He walked away, leaving Aita and Nashota alone beneath the stars. "He's not wrong to worry," Nashota said quietly. "The world is changing faster than we can adapt. But he's wrong that we should become like them, cruel to the vulnerable, afraid of what's different." He touched Liluye's cheek with one weathered finger. "Raise her well, niece. Teach her both strength and compassion. She'll need both." Back in Ridgemont, in a small cabin that smelled of sickness and grief, Sarah Mitchell lay in bed staring at the ceiling. 3 weeks had passed since they took her baby. 3 weeks of prayer and fasting, as Elder Blackwood had prescribed. 3 weeks of Thomas avoiding her eyes, of the community treating her like a wounded animal, pitied but feared. The midwife came daily with broth and scripture. The other women left food at her door but wouldn't enter. Sarah ate nothing, said nothing. She had tried screaming, she had tried begging, she had tried reason. Nothing had worked. At night, when Thomas finally slept, Sarah would slip from bed and stand at the window, looking toward the sacred cliffs. Sometimes she imagined she could hear crying, not the wind, but her daughter, still alive somehow, calling for her. It was madness. She knew it was madness, but she couldn't stop listening. 4 summers passed like water through cupped hands. Liluye grew tall for her age, all long limbs and boundless energy. Her hair remained dark, but in certain light it showed hints of auburn that marked her as different from the other children. Her skin, though tanned by constant sun, would never be as dark as theirs, and her eyes, those impossible eyes, drew stares wherever she went. But what truly set her apart was something less visible. She could find things, lost things, hidden things, things that shouldn't be found. When Takoda's hunting knife disappeared, Liluye walked straight to a crevice 20 feet from where he'd last seen it. When Sana's son wandered too far from camp during a gathering, Liluye stood perfectly still, turned in a slow circle, then pointed west, and there he was, unharmed but frightened, hiding among the rocks. "How did you know?" Ayita would ask. Liluye would shrug, uncomfortable with the attention. "I just saw it. Not with these." She'd touch her eyes, but with something else. Kimimela called it the gift of the spirit touched. Others called it unnatural. Takoda watched the girl with a mixture of wariness and grudging respect. She was useful. That much was undeniable. But useful things could also be dangerous. Ayita taught her everything. The names of plants in both Apache and the halting English Ayita had learned from traders. How to move through the canyon without disturbing a single stone. How to read the sky for weather, the ground for tracks, the behavior of animals for warnings of danger. How to weave baskets so tight they could hold water. How to prepare hides, fashion arrows, kindle fire from friction alone. But more than skills, Ayita taught her questions. "Why do you teach me their language?" Liluye asked one afternoon as they gathered wild onions near the spring. She was 5 now, old enough to wonder about such things. "Because you live between worlds," Ayita replied, not looking up from her work. "The white people threw you away, but their blood runs in your veins. You have a right to both languages, both ways of seeing. Do I have a right to both peoples?" The question was so perceptive it made Ayita pause. She studied the child, no longer an infant, not quite a girl, and saw intelligence burning in those mismatched eyes. "That," Ayita said carefully, "is something you must decide for yourself. But I can tell you this. Belonging is not about blood. It's about choice. It's about who claims you and who you claim in return." That night, Liluye lay awake in the shelter she shared with Ayita, listening to the older woman's steady breathing. Through the opening, she could see stars. Thousands of them, more than she could ever count. With her dark eye, they looked warm and familiar. With her pale eye, they looked cold and distant. She wondered which way was true, or if maybe both were. Miles away in Ridgemont, the settlement had grown. What had been 43 souls was now 71. New families arrived monthly, fleeing the violence of the Civil War's aftermath, seeking fresh starts in territories where the federal government's attention remained scattered and weak. With growth came confidence, and with confidence came expansion. Thomas Mitchell had become a different man, harder, more silent. He threw himself into work with the desperation of someone trying to outrun memory. He'd built a larger cabin, cleared more land, taken on leadership roles he'd never sought before. People respected him now, looked to him for guidance. They didn't know what it cost him, didn't know that he avoided his wife's eyes, that he couldn't bear to be in the same room with Elder Blackwood, that sometimes he woke in the night with the phantom sound of a baby crying. Sarah had survived, though calling it living would be generous. She moved through her days like a ghost, fulfilling duties without presence, speaking without saying anything true. The other women pitied her, the men avoided her, and slowly, inevitably, she became invisible. Except to one person. Ruth Anderson had been there the night they took Sarah's baby. She'd stood in the back of the crowd, holding her own daughter close, and said nothing. In the years since, that silence had grown into a weight she carried like stones in her pockets. She found Sarah one afternoon by the creek, washing clothes with mechanical efficiency. "I think about her," Ruth said without preamble. "The baby. I think about her every day." Sarah's hands stilled in the water. She didn't look up. Elder Blackwood says, "What's done is done." That we saved the community, but I don't feel saved. I feel... Ruth's voice cracked. "I feel like we killed an innocent child." "She wasn't innocent," Sarah whispered, her voice rusty from disuse. "She was marked. Different. That's what you all said. We were wrong." Those 3 words hung in the air between them. Sarah finally looked up, her eyes hollow with grief that had calcified into something harder. Wrong doesn't bring her back. "No," Ruth agreed. "But maybe..." She hesitated, then continued in a rush. "There are stories. Apache stories about white children raised by the tribes. Maybe someone found her, maybe she lived." Sarah's laugh was bitter. Hope is worse than grief. At least grief is honest. But later, when Ruth had gone, Sarah found herself standing at the window again, looking toward the mountains where the Apache were said to hide. She'd spent 4 years trying to bury hope, trying to accept that her daughter was dead, trying to become the empty vessel the community needed her to be. What if Ruth was right? What if there was even the smallest chance? The thought was dangerous, destabilizing. It cracked open something Sarah had sealed shut to survive. She pressed her palm against the glass, feeling its cool surface, and whispered to her reflection, "Where are you?" In the hidden valley, Liluye woke suddenly from a dream she couldn't remember. Her chest felt tight, her breathing shallow, as if someone had called her name from very far away. Ayita stirred. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," Liluye said, staring into the darkness. "I felt something, like someone looking for me. The spirits. No, something different. Something sad." Ayita pulled the girl close, feeling her small heart racing. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the world speaks in ways we don't yet understand. Sleep, little one. Tomorrow we'll ask Kimimela what it means." But neither of them slept easily that night, and in the morning, everything would begin to change. The morning Kimimela died, Liluye knew before anyone told her. She woke with tears on her face, a hollow ache in her chest that had no name. When Ayita emerged from Kimimela's shelter with red-rimmed eyes, Liluye simply nodded. She'd already begun gathering sage for the burial ceremony. "How did you know?" Sana asked, watching the 6-year-old work with hands too steady for her age. Liluye couldn't explain it. She'd seen Kimimela in her dreams, walking toward a light that hurt to look at directly. The old woman had turned back once, smiled, and said something Liluye couldn't hear. Then she'd vanished. "I just knew," was all she could say. The burial took 3 days. The band sang the old songs, burned offerings, told stories of Kimimela's long life. But when it was over, something fundamental had shifted. Kimimela had been their last connection to the ancient ways, the last elder who remembered the time before the white man came. Without her, they felt smaller, more vulnerable, like a tree losing its deepest root. Nashota felt it most acutely. He stood at the edge of the burial site long after the others had left, his weathered face turned toward the sky. "We're fading," he said when Ayita joined him. "Our language, our stories, our ways, they're slipping away like water through our fingers. In 2 generations, who will remember what we were?" "Liluye will," Ayita said quietly. Nashota turned to look at her. "A white child? She'll grow up and return to her people. You know this. She's not white, she's ours. Blood doesn't lie, niece. Look at her. Her skin grows lighter each winter, her features sharper. In 2 more years, she'll look like any settler child. What happens then?" Ayita had no answer. She'd been asking herself the same question every day since the rescue. The very next morning brought news that made the question more urgent. Takoda returned from a scouting run with his face grim, his horse lathered with sweat. "The whites are moving," he announced to the gathered band. "They've started clearing land 3 miles east of here, building cabins, setting fences. By summer's end, they'll be within a day's walk." "We'll move deeper into the mountains," Nashota said immediately. "And then what? When they push there too? We're 15 people. There are hundreds now, maybe thousands across the territory. We can't run forever." "Then what do you suggest?" Nashota's voice carried an edge that made everyone tense. "Walk into their settlements and ask them nicely to leave us alone? I suggest we accept reality. The old ways are dying. Maybe it's time to adapt before we're erased completely." The argument that erupted was fierce but short-lived. Nashota had final say, and his decision was to move the camp deeper into the canyon system, to the place where the walls were so narrow that horses couldn't pass and wagons were impossible. It would be harder to hunt there, harder to gather food, but safer from discovery. They began breaking camp the next day. Liluye helped Ayita pack their belongings with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Because she had. Twice in her 6 years, the band had moved to avoid encroaching settlers. "Why do they keep coming?" Liluye asked as she rolled sleeping hides. "Don't they have enough land?" "They don't think about land the way we do," Ayita explained. "To them, empty land is wasted land. They can't imagine that someone might want to live lightly on the earth, to take only what's needed. So they take everything." "Yes." Liluye was silent for a moment, her pale eye catching the morning light. "If I went to them, could I explain? Could I make them understand?" Ayita's hands froze. "You would never survive approaching them alone. A child, especially one who looks like you do, they'd either take you or hurt you. Because of my eyes. Because you're different, and people fear what's different." That afternoon, while the adults were occupied with moving the larger items, Liluye slipped away. She told herself she was just exploring, just curious, but her feet carried her east, toward where Takoda had said the settlers were clearing land. She moved silently, the way Ayita had taught her, becoming one with the landscape. The sounds of the forest changed as she approached. Fewer birds, more human voices, the crack of axes against wood. Liluye climbed a rocky outcrop and looked down into a small clearing. There were 4 of them, 3 men swinging axes, felling trees with systematic efficiency, and 1 woman, younger than Ayita, hanging washing on a line strung between 2 surviving trees. The woman was singing, a melody Liluye didn't recognize but found strangely beautiful. She should have left, should have returned to camp before anyone noticed her absence. But something held her there, watching. The woman turned, and for just a moment their eyes met across the distance. Liluye saw the woman's face go still, saw her mouth form a perfect O of surprise. Then Liluye was running, heart pounding, crashing through underbrush without care for silence. She didn't stop until she reached camp, breathless and frightened of what she'd done. Ayita took one look at her face and pulled her into the shelter. "What happened?" "I went to see them, the settlers. A woman saw me." Ayita's expression cycled through shock, fear and anger before settling on resignation. "Did she see where you went?" "I don't think so. I ran." "What did she look like?" Liluye described her. Blonde hair, thin frame, a long scar on her forearm. Ayita's face went pale. "Ruth Anderson. I've seen her at the trading post. She's married to one of the settlement leaders. Will she come looking? I don't know. But we need to tell your uncle." Nashota's reaction was controlled but severe. "We leave tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight." "Uncle, she's just one woman. She probably thinks she saw a trick of the light." Or she saw exactly what she saw, an Apache child with white features, and she'll tell others, we can't risk it. As the band scrambled to finish packing in the fading light, Liluye sat alone, staring at her hands. They didn't look particularly white to her, but she was learning that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was perception, assumption, fear. She was learning that the world would never let her be both things. It would demand she choose, and the choice would destroy half of who she was. In Ridgemont, Ruth Anderson sat at her dinner table, pushing food around her plate without eating. Her husband Daniel noticed but said nothing. Ruth had been distant lately, distracted. She kept seeing those eyes, one brown, one pale blue. Impossible eyes on an impossible face. The glimpse had been brief, but she was certain of what she'd seen. A child, watching from the rocks. A child who'd vanished like smoke. After dinner, she walked to Sarah Mitchell's cabin and knocked on the door. Sarah opened the door with the wariness of someone who'd learned not to expect good news. Ruth stood on the porch, her hands twisting together, her face flushed from the walk. "I need to tell you something," Ruth said without greeting. "Can I come in?" Thomas was out checking traps. Sarah gestured Ruth inside to the small table where she'd been mending a shirt by lamplight. Neither woman sat. "I saw a child today," Ruth began, her words tumbling out in a rush, "near the new clearing. An Apache child, I think, but—" She paused, searching for words. Sarah, she had the strangest eyes, one brown, one pale, like— Sarah's knees buckled. She caught herself on the table's edge, her breath coming in short gasps. "It could be nothing," Ruth continued quickly. "A trick of light, my imagination. But I thought you should know, in case—" "Where?" Sarah's voice was barely audible. "Where exactly?" "East clearing. 3 miles from here. But Sarah, even if it was, even if somehow, the Apache wouldn't just let you take her. And the men, I don't care about the men." Sarah was already moving, pulling on her shawl, gathering supplies with shaking hands. "I don't care about any of it. Sarah, wait, think. You can't just walk into Apache territory alone. You'll be killed. Then I'll be killed." Sarah turned, and Ruth saw something in her face that made her step back, a ferociousness that had been buried under grief for 6 years. "I've been dead since the night they took her. If there's even a chance she's alive, I'm going to find her." Ruth grabbed her arm. "Then let me help. Let me talk to Daniel, to the others. We can organize a proper search. And what? Storm an Apache camp? Start a war?" Sarah pulled away. "No, if she's there, if she's been raised by them, the only way to reach her is alone, without guns, without threats." "That's insane. Everything about this is insane." Sarah tied her shawl tight. "I've spent 6 years doing what everyone else thought was right, being who they needed me to be. I'm done." Before Ruth could argue further, Sarah slipped out into the night, leaving the other woman standing in the empty cabin, wondering if she'd just sent someone to their death. Miles away, in the narrow canyon that would be their new home, the band worked through the night to establish camp. The space was cramped, rock walls rising so steeply on both sides that sunlight would only reach them for a few hours each day. Water was scarce, game would be scarcer, and the very air felt heavy with confinement. Liluye helped where she could, carrying bundles too heavy for her age, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. She could feel the resentment radiating from Takoda, the worry from Nashota, the disappointment from Ayita. This move was her fault, her curiosity, her recklessness. "Little one," Ayita called softly. "Come." They walked to the edge of the camp, where a small fire burned. Ayita sat, patting the ground beside her. Liluye sat, staring into the flames. "I'm sorry," Liluye whispered. "Sorry isn't enough," Ayita replied, her voice gentle but firm. "Your actions have consequences. Everyone here is in danger now because you couldn't control your curiosity. I just wanted to understand them." "Understand what? That they're people like us?" You already knew that? Or did you want them to see you, recognize you as one of their own? The question hit too close. Lilui's eyes burned with tears she wouldn't let fall. I don't know what I wanted. Aita pulled her close. You're at an age where the questions get harder and the answers fewer. But you must learn this now. In this world, curiosity can kill. Not just you, all of us. I won't go near them again. Good. Aita kissed her forehead. Now sleep. Tomorrow we start learning this new place. But Liluye didn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to the strange echoes of the canyon, feeling the weight of being the reason her family, and they were her family, she told herself fiercely, had to hide even deeper in the shadows. Sarah walked through the night guided by moon and memory. She'd grown up in these mountains, knew them better than most. The paths were dangerous, but fear had been burned out of her long ago, replaced by something that felt like purpose. She reached the area where Ruth had described seeing the child just as dawn broke. The clearing was empty, the trees freshly cut. But there, on the rocky outcrop, she found small footprints, child-sized, moccasins, not boots. Sarah's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She climbed the rocks, following the prints as far as they went before the stone became too hard to mark. They led northwest, toward the deeper canyons. She should turn back, should get help, supplies, a proper search party. But the thought of returning to Ridgemont, of facing Thomas's defeated eyes and Elder Blackwood's cold certainty, was unbearable. So she kept walking. By midday, she was deep in territory she'd never explored. The landscape changed. Narrower passages, steeper walls, fewer signs of any life at all. Her water was running low, her feet blistering in boots not meant for this kind of travel. She was about to admit defeat when she heard it. Voices, speaking in a language she didn't understand, but unmistakably human. Sarah pressed herself against a rock wall, hardly daring to breathe. 2 Apache men passed within 10 feet of her, carrying bundles of supplies. They were relaxed, talking casually, completely unaware of her presence. When they'd moved on, Sarah followed at a careful distance. Her pulse roared in her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet kept moving forward, drawn by something stronger than fear. The canyon opened into a hidden valley, small, cramped, but clearly inhabited, shelters made of hide and wood, a central fire pit, and people. So few of them, Sarah realized with surprise, maybe 15 total. And there, helping an older woman hang herbs to dry, was a child. Sarah couldn't see her face from this angle, couldn't see her eyes. But something in the way the girl moved, the tilt of her head, the shape of her small shoulders, resonated through Sarah's body like a bell being struck. She opened her mouth to call out, but a hand clamped over it from behind. A man's voice, speaking urgent Apache words, pulled her backward into the shadows. She tried to struggle, but he was strong, and her strength had long since been depleted by grief and the night's journey. Darkness swam at the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the child turning. Those impossible eyes, one brown, one pale, looking directly at her hiding place, then nothing. Sarah woke to firelight and pain. Her head throbbed where she'd been struck, and her hands were bound behind her back with strips of leather. She lay on hard-packed earth, staring up at a shelter's hide ceiling, and for a moment couldn't remember how she'd gotten there. Then memory crashed back, the canyon, the voices, the child. She struggled upright despite the spinning in her head. Outside the shelter, she could hear voices arguing in Apache, sharp, angry exchanges. Her heart raced. She'd heard stories about what happened to white captives, most of them too brutal to repeat. The shelter's flap opened. A man entered, middle-aged, weathered, with eyes that measured her without emotion. Behind him came the woman Sarah had seen with the child, younger, with a face that held both strength and wariness. "Why are you here?" the man asked in heavily accented English. Sarah's throat was too dry to speak. The woman handed her a water skin, watching carefully as Sarah drank. The water was cool, tasting of minerals and earth. "I'm looking for my daughter," Sarah finally said, her voice cracking. The man and woman exchanged glances. Something passed between them, recognition perhaps, or warning. "There are no white children here," the man said. "I saw her." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "I saw a child with two different colored eyes. One brown, one blue. She's 6 years old. My daughter was born with those eyes, and you threw her from a cliff because of it." The woman, Ayita, though Sarah didn't know her name yet, drew in a sharp breath. "How did you find us?" "Someone saw her. 3 miles from here. I followed her tracks." "Alone?" Nashota couldn't hide his surprise. "No weapons, no men with you. They took my daughter from me once. I won't let anyone else decide her fate." Silence fell. Outside, Sarah could hear children playing, their laughter innocent of the drama unfolding. One voice stood out, lighter than the others, asking questions in Apache that made the other children giggle. "That's her," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "That's my baby." Ayita knelt in front of Sarah, her expression intense. "Your people threw her away like garbage, left her to die on rocks. I found her, I fed her, I raised her. For 6 years, she's been mine. I didn't throw her away. They did, while I screamed and begged and—" Sarah's voice broke. "I never wanted to lose her. I never stopped looking. And now you found us," Nashota said coldly. "How long before others follow? How long before soldiers come?" "I told no one where I was going. No one knows. Your friend knows. The woman who saw Liluye, she'll talk. Ruth won't betray me, or you. She's carried guilt for 6 years about what happened." Ayita and Nashota spoke rapidly in Apache. Sarah caught nothing except the name, Liluye, so that's what they'd called her. A name that belonged to this world, this life, not the one Sarah had imagined during long, sleepless nights. "What will you do?" Ayita finally asked. "If we let you see her, let you speak to her, what then?" The question was harder than Sarah expected. In her dreams, she'd imagined her daughter running into her arms, remembered somehow choosing to come home. But looking at these two people who'd clearly loved and protected her child when Sarah couldn't, she realized how foolish those dreams were. "I don't know," she admitted. I need to see her. Need her to know I exist, that I didn't abandon her." "She knows she was abandoned," Ayita said sharply. "She's old enough to understand what it means to be thrown from a cliff. Then let me tell her the truth, that I fought for her, that I never stopped loving her." Nashota stood abruptly. "This is a mistake. We should send her back blindfolded, let her people think she imagined everything. Or kill her." Dakota's voice came from the entrance. He stood there, his hand resting on his knife. "The only sure way to keep us safe." Sarah felt fear spike through her, but she kept her eyes on Ayita. "If you kill me, she'll always wonder. Always ask questions. Is that the burden you want her to carry?" "We're already carrying burdens," Dakota said. "What's one more?" "Enough." Nashota raised his hand. "We'll bring Liluya here. Let her see this woman. Then we decide." They led Sarah outside, still bound but able to walk. The small band gathered, faces curious and suspicious. Sarah scanned them desperately until she found her. Lilu stood beside an older woman, partially hidden by her body. But Sarah could see enough, the dark hair with hints of auburn, the delicate features, the small frame. And then Lilui looked up, and their eyes met. Sarah's knees nearly buckled. Those eyes. She'd memorized them in the brief hours after birth, had seen them in dreams ever since. One brown, warm and deep, one pale blue, striking and strange, both filled now with confusion and something that might have been recognition, though that seemed impossible. "Liluye," Ayita called softly. "Come here, little one." The girl moved forward slowly, her hand still clutching the older woman's skirt. She was tall for 6, all long limbs and cautious grace. She wore a deerskin dress, her feet in small moccasins, her hair braided with careful precision. She looked like an Apache child in every way except for her features, which grew more obviously white the closer she came. "Who is she?" Lilui asked in Apache, then repeated in halting English. "Who?" Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I'm your mother." Lilui's face showed no understanding, only more confusion. "I have mother." She pointed to Aita. The words hit Sarah like physical blows, but she forced herself to keep speaking. "I gave birth to you 6 years ago in a place called Ridgemont. They took you from me because of your beautiful eyes, because they were afraid, but I never stopped loving you, not for one single day." Liluye looked at Aita, questions in her eyes. Aita nodded slowly, giving permission for something Sarah couldn't interpret. "I don't remember," Liluye said simply, still in English. "I only know here, only know them." "I know," Sarah whispered, "and I'm not asking you to leave them. I needed you to know, to understand that someone fought for you, that you were wanted, that you were loved." The council met that night while Sarah remained under guard in Aita's shelter. Liluye had been sent to stay with Sana, but she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the hide ceiling, trying to understand the storm of feelings inside her chest. She had another mother, a mother with pale skin and sad eyes, and a voice that shook when she spoke. A mother who claimed to love her, but had let others throw her away. "It's not that simple," Sana said softly from her corner. She'd been watching Liluye toss and turn. "The whites have different ways. They follow their elders even when their hearts say otherwise. Aita wouldn't have let them take me. Aita is Apache. We're taught from birth that the individual matters less than the whole, but also that protecting children is sacred duty above all else. The whites, they're confused about such things." Lilui turned to face her. "Do you think she's telling the truth? That she didn't want them to do it?" "I think pain doesn't lie." Sana adjusted her sleeping son in her arms. "I saw her face today. That was the face of a woman who's been dying slowly for 6 years. At the council fire, the debate raged. We should kill her and be done with it, Takoda argued. Every moment she lives is a risk to us all. She came alone, Aita countered. No weapons, no soldiers. That takes courage or madness or both. Madness we can't afford to reward, Nashota said heavily. If we let her go, she knows where we are. If we keep her, we have to feed another mouth we can barely afford. If we kill her... He trailed off, unwilling to complete the thought. There's another option. All eyes turned to Aita. We let Liluye choose. The silence that followed was profound. She's 6 years old, Takoda said finally. You'd put this burden on a child. She's already carrying the burden. At least this way, she has voice in her own fate. Nashota studied Aita for a long moment. And if she chooses to go with the white woman, can you let her? Aita's face revealed nothing, but her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap. If that's what she truly wants, then yes, because that's what love is, putting the child's needs above your own heart. In Ridgemont, Thomas Mitchell finally noticed his wife was gone. He'd come home late from the fields, had eaten the cold dinner she'd left, had assumed she was already asleep. It wasn't until morning, when the bed beside him remained undisturbed and no breakfast sat waiting, that alarm began to creep in. He searched the cabin, the barn, the root cellar. Her shawl was missing, so were her good walking boots. Ruth Anderson answered his pounding on her door with a face full of guilt. Before he could speak, she said, "She went looking for the child I saw. I tried to stop her, Thomas. I swear I tried." Thomas's face drained of color. "When?" 2 nights ago. 2 nights? His voice rose. Why didn't you tell someone? Send men after her. She made me promise, said if I told anyone, she'd never forgive me. Ruth's hands twisted together. I thought she'd come back. I thought she'd realize it was hopeless and come home. Thomas was already moving, shouting for the other men, organizing a search party. Elder Blackwood tried to stop him. The woman made her choice, the old man said, chasing after savage stories. Thomas's fist connected with Blackwood's jaw before anyone could intervene. The elder fell hard, blood streaming from his mouth. Thomas stood over him, breathing heavily. You took my daughter, he said, his voice shaking with rage finally unleashed. You convinced me it was God's will, that it was necessary. I've lived with that for 6 years. I won't lose Sarah, too. He grabbed his rifle and headed for the door. 10 men followed him, leaving Elder Blackwood on the ground, spitting blood and fury. In the hidden canyon, morning came with decisions to be made. Sarah was brought before the council, her hands still bound. Liluya stood nearby, Ayita's hand on her shoulder. The child will decide, Nashota announced. Liluya, you must choose. Do you want to go with this woman, to live with the whites? Or do you want to stay here, with us? Every eye turned to the small girl. Liluya looked at Sarah, this stranger who claimed to have loved her, who wore grief like a second skin. Then she looked at Ayita, who'd taught her to walk, to speak, to understand the language of plants and animals, who'd sung her to sleep through nightmares, who'd celebrated her small triumphs and forgiven her mistakes. Can I ask something first? Liluya said in a small voice. Sarah nodded, tears already streaming down her face. If you loved me, Liluya asked, why didn't you fight harder? Why didn't you run away with me before they could take me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah closed her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Because I was weak, because I was afraid, because I let other people tell me what was right instead of listening to my own heart. She opened her eyes, meeting Liluya's mismatched gaze. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Liluya was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her words were careful, measured. I choose to stay here, with Ayita, with my people. She paused, then added in a softer voice, but I don't want you to die. The sound of horses reached the canyon before dawn. Takoda, on watch at the narrow entrance, counted 12 riders moving through the pre-dawn darkness. All armed, all white. He didn't need to guess why they'd come. They're here, he announced, running back to camp. 12 men, rifles and rage. The band mobilized with the efficiency of people who'd rehearsed this scenario countless times. Women grabbed children, heading for the escape route at the canyon's far end. A narrow crevice that could be climbed, but was too tight for horses. Men took defensive positions among the rocks, bows ready. Ayita grabbed Liluya. Go with Sana, now. But Sarah, I'll handle it, go. Sarah, still bound, struggled to her feet as Nashota approached. They've come for you. We could hand you over, send you back. No. The voice came from Liluya, who hadn't left as instructed. If they find her, they find us. We all leave together or none of us do. Ayita's expression shifted between pride and terror. Liluya, you must... I made a choice to stay, Liluya interrupted, her young voice carrying unexpected authority. That means I protect my family. All of my family. Sarah stared at the child, her child, who just claimed her as family despite choosing another mother. Something fundamental shifted in her chest. Untie me, Sarah said urgently. I can talk to them, convince them to leave. They won't listen, Takoda said. Then I'll make them listen. Sarah's voice hardened with determination. Thomas is out there, my husband. He'll listen to me. Nashota studied her for a moment, then cut her bonds. Sarah rubbed her wrists, then looked at Liluya. You're right. We protect family. Let me protect mine." She walked toward the canyon entrance, hands raised, calling out in English, "Thomas! Thomas Mitchell, it's Sarah, don't shoot." The sound of rifles being cocked echoed off stone walls. Then Thomas's voice, thick with emotion. "Sarah? Sarah, is that you?" "It's me, I'm alive, I'm coming out." Aita moved to follow, but Sarah shook her head. "This is something I need to do alone." She emerged into the growing light to find Thomas dismounted, his rifle lowered but not discarded. His face was haggard, aged beyond the 6 years since she'd last really looked at him. Behind him stood men she recognized, neighbors, friends, people who'd stood silent while they murdered her daughter. "Sarah," Thomas's voice cracked. "We thought you were dead, or taken. We've been searching. I came here of my own will." Sarah stepped forward, putting herself between the armed men and the canyon entrance. "And I'm asking you to leave. All of you. Turn around and forget you ever found this place. Have they hurt you? Threatened you? They saved my daughter's life." The words fell like stones into still water. Thomas's face went pale. Behind him, men shifted uncomfortably. "That's not possible," Thomas whispered. "The baby died. We saw—" "You saw what you wanted to see, confirmation of your cruelty. But she lived. An Apache woman found her, caught her, raised her, and now you're going to leave them in peace. Sarah, you're not thinking clearly. Whatever they've told you, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years." Sarah's voice rose. "Do you know what it took for me to come here alone? To face the people who have every reason to kill me on sight? I did it because I needed to see my daughter. And I did. And she's happy, Thomas. She's loved. She has a family. She has a family. Us! We're her family. We threw her off a cliff." Sarah's scream echoed through the canyon. "We listened to a frightened old man who twisted scripture to justify murder. That's not family. That's a mob." Thomas flinched as if she'd struck him. The other men looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "She made a choice," Sarah continued, her voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. "She chose to stay with the people who raised her. And I'm going to honor that choice, which means you need to leave, now. And if I don't," Thomas's voice was hollow, "if I say we're taking you back whether you want to go or not." Sarah pulled a knife from her belt, the one Nashota had given her to cut her bonds. She held it to her own throat. "Then you'll have to kill me to do it, and I promise you, Thomas Mitchell, I will scream loud enough that every Apache in these mountains knows where you are. Is that what you want? To start a war over a woman who doesn't want saving?" The standoff held for an eternity. Then, slowly, Thomas lowered his rifle completely. "Stand down," he told the others. "We're leaving." "But Tom," one man protested, "I said we're leaving." Thomas's shout startled birds from nearby trees. "I've destroyed one life because I followed Elder Blackwood's madness. I won't destroy another." He looked at Sarah one last time. "Will you ever come home?" Sarah lowered the knife. "This is home now." 5 years passed, like seasons turning, each one bringing changes both subtle and profound. Sarah never returned to Ridgemont. She learned Apache slowly, her tongue stumbling over sounds that came naturally to Liluye. She learned to tan hides, to identify edible plants, to move through the canyon without disturbing stones. The band accepted her gradually, not because they forgot what her people had done, but because they saw her prove herself daily through work, respect, and unwavering dedication. Thomas visited twice. The first time, he brought supplies, blankets, medicine, seeds, left at the canyon entrance without demanding entry. The second time, a year later, he brought news. Elder Blackwood had died, and the new leadership in Ridgemont had forbidden any further persecution of the Apache. The treaty was fragile, built on mutual avoidance rather than understanding, but it held. He asked to see Sarah. She agreed with Nashota's permission. They spoke for an hour on neutral ground, a clearing halfway between worlds. Thomas told her he'd left the settlement, moved west to start over. He'd never remarried. She told him she'd found peace, found purpose. They parted without anger, two people who'd once shared a life but had grown into different stories. Liluya, now 11, had grown tall and confident. Her mismatched eyes no longer drew stares from the band. They'd become familiar, even treasured. When game was scarce, she could find it. When someone went missing, she could sense their direction. The gift that had once marked her for death now made her invaluable. She called Ayita Mother and Sarah Mama Sarah. The two women had developed a careful balance, neither competing for the girl's affection, both contributing what they could. Ayita taught tradition, connection to the land, the old ways. Sarah taught reading and writing, skills that Nashota recognized might be essential for survival in a changing world. One evening, as the three of them sat by the fire working on a basket together, Liluya asked the question that had been growing in her for years. "Do you think I'm Apache or white?" Ayita and Sarah exchanged glances. Sarah spoke first. "I think you're Liluya, and Liluya is both and neither and something entirely her own." "But people always want to know," the girl pressed. "They want me to choose." "Then they're asking the wrong question," Ayita said, her fingers never stopping their weaving. "The question isn't what you are. It's what you'll do with who you are." Liluya considered this, her pale eye catching the firelight and gleaming like silver. "I want to be a bridge between the whites and the Apache, so fewer children end up like me, thrown away for being different." Sarah's hands stilled. "That's a difficult path." "Being alive at all was difficult," Liluya replied, with the pragmatism of someone who'd been told from birth that she should have died. "But I'm here. Maybe that means something." That winter, when a harsh storm trapped 3 white children lost in the mountains, it was Liluya who found them. She brought them to the Apache camp, where they were fed, warmed, and returned safely to their families. The gesture opened doors that had been bolted shut. By the time Liluya turned 15, she was traveling between settlements regularly, carrying messages, negotiating trades, teaching whites about the land, and teaching Apache about the changing political landscape. She was trusted by neither side completely, but needed by both. She never forgot what she'd been, a discarded infant, marked as cursed, falling toward death. But she also never let that define her future. Her eyes, one dark and one light, had once been seen as a sign of evil. Now people said they were proof that one person could hold 2 worlds without breaking. On her 16th birthday, Liluya stood at the edge of the sacred cliffs where her first life had ended and her second had begun. Sarah and Ayita stood with her, one on each side. "Do you ever wonder," Liluya asked, looking down at the rocks below, "what would have happened if Ayita hadn't been gathering herbs that morning?" "Every day," Sarah whispered. "I don't," Ayita said firmly, "because she was, because you lived. Some things are meant to be even when they start with cruelty." Liluya nodded slowly. Then she turned her back on the cliff, on the death she'd escaped, on the fear that had tried to destroy her, and walked forward, flanked by both mothers, toward whatever future waited in the valley below. Behind them, the sun set in colors that could only be seen with eyes willing to look at the world from more than one perspective. And in the growing darkness, the stars emerged. Thousands of them, each one different, each one necessary, each one proof that beauty often lies in what makes us unique.